Hey, it's Guido coming at you with a tactics talk. We're going to change gears a little bit and talk about some platoon issues. I have loaded in here on highway on my IS-4. I am here with Joey the Bacon Eater, another clan member. He is also running an IS-4, so we're top tier. We're going to talk about some of the things you should do as a platoon in order to maximize the effectiveness of a platoon. So what does a platoon do for you? Well, obviously, if you bring two good players into the match, you've got at least one other guy in the match that you can count on, so long as you run together, or so long as you have good communications if you happen to split up and have a good reason, which we'll get into in just a moment, some reasons you may want to do that. But when you're running as a platoon, one of the things you should do is have communications. And with the communications, then you can discuss what you are seeing when you load in. So as soon as Joey and I loaded into this game, we looked at the lineups and we made a couple of assumptions right off the bat. First of all, we are in good shape because we've got many more tier 10s. We've got 7 and they've got 5. So Matchmaker did them no favors in this match at all. Also, if you look at it as we're discussing it and we started moving, you can see that the enemy team is heavy on the mediums up top, and we are obviously heavy on the heavy tanks. Because it's highway, there are several ways to win this match. The two main ones are the kind of medium push across here on the 1-2 line. The other one is the heavy push into the city and then pushing up into their cap. With both of those, you can come back. The south spawn has an easier time coming back to their cap, although it can be difficult, especially if they're trying to get up this hill when they've got cappers sitting up here. I would say that the north cap has a much harder time coming back from over in this field area and getting back, but still they can use these hold down positions and take out any of our heavies that push up. That's basically how this map is run. There's usually some skirmishing in the middle, scouts, maybe some TDs along these edges, that kind of thing, but it's not usually decisive. But if you look at this, then probably the enemy's best course of action is to send their mediums along the 1-2 line push and overwhelm whatever we send over there. An assumption I would make, and most people would make, is that the heavies from our team are going to push into the town and own it. And then they may have to deal with them coming back or potentially fast cap us right there. But if they send a bunch of their tier 10 mediums, which they're outnumbered anyway, into the city, that's probably not going to work. So that discussion is being had by Joey and I, and we start heading off to the city. Now we are going to stick together, but you're going to notice something. There's another platoon of pretty decent players in IS-7s, and if you pay attention to what's going on, I'm kind of looking at this happen and we're discussing it, you'll see that one of the IS-7s starts to head off onto the 1-2 line. And you can see that the 4502 is discussing it, saying good decision. And at first I wasn't too happy about that, but when I thought about it, I said, and I was discussing it with Joey, I said, well, that's probably a good idea because they are going to have a huge advantage in mediums over on that side, and if we send an IS-7, he could really gum up the works over there with a medium push, obviously if he avoids getting nuked by the arty. The arty is the X factor in this game. If you do head out with your heavy over onto the 1-2 line, you do stand a large chance of getting nuked by the arty. But with the IS-7 and a couple mediums and a couple of those big TDs over there, we figure we can get into the city, win the city, and they should be able to either hold or maul the mediums enough that we can get back. So let's see how this plays out as we push in here. Those are all the discussions that Joey and I had, and then by reading the chat and paying attention to what the other players are doing, we basically figured that's what was going on. You can see the other IS-7's getting aggressive. What does he know? Well, he knows that more than likely the mediums are not in town, and we'll run into what you see right there, the 110E5, the T10, and maybe a couple other tier 8 kind of heavy tanks, and that's a huge advantage. Now he kind of gets hammered going across. I'm going to take advantage of the fact that those two have probably fired and the fact that I don't expect there to be too much in here, and I'm just going to push in on these guys. Come across here. Oh, there's a T30, so I do need to be careful. Got a side shot on the T10, and I should be able to get in there and back out. Now I've got to be careful about pushing my rear end back here in case those guys come around the corner, and he's really low health right now. I really don't want to come around that corner and get tagged in the side by the T30 and the T110E5. And we can see that we're getting pushed here by some other guys, so let's go ahead and start working on them. Those guys are hiding around the corner, and we got Joey behind me side scraping, doing a nice job of bouncing shots, and we end up losing the IS-7 pretty quick. So while the aggressive move was decent, he was kind of out in the open. And we'll start working on these guys now. If you take a look at the 1-2 line, they are holding on to it pretty well. The IS-7 is definitely gumming up the works for those guys. I'll come out here, and there's that shot I knew I would take if I poked my front end around that corner. And we've got to go ahead and try to finish these guys off. I see the T-30 coming, so I'm just going to tuck myself up as soon as I hammer him. I know his dispersion is pretty big, so he was driving up. I was pretty sure I wouldn't take a hit right there. I side scrape. He ended up getting nervous. That happens when people get on a reload and they realize they can't get a good shot. Sometimes they'll just take what they got. And I'm able to come in there on his reload and take him out. And now Joey and I are talking about this 110E5. Playing peekaboo with him is probably not a great idea, even though we've got 2 IS-4s, and I end up shooting there, getting into his top or maybe into his track with heat. So it's going to eat the heat. And we're discussing now, hey, let's just push forward. Just stop long enough to take that shot. Let's just push forward on him. One of us at least will get around his side and we can finish him off pretty quickly. He ends up shooting me. I'll fix my driver. If you take a look at the 1-2 line, it's still holding. So the enemy team hasn't been able to overrun our tanks over there. And you can see that we've already taken a good chunk of their team away. And it has basically panned out exactly as we talked about. Now, let's discuss the matchmaker real quick. Obviously, it was terrible for them. They were given a very difficult challenge, and they were going to have to play a really good game to beat us there. So permissive, it was a very permissive environment matchmaker wise, but still the discussion about what you should be talking about as Platoon and the things you should be doing in your communication and analyzing the game itself and how it flows are all still valid. So obviously this one's going to work out really well for us. Both of us in the 3000s on damage, which is not top of the line amazing, obviously tier 10 damage, but pretty decent. But the discussions we had and the plan we made absolutely panned out. We looked at the map, we looked at what was going on with the players and the tanks, and we made a plan. Now, if you got to flex, go ahead and do so. But as a platoon, as long as you're working together and discussing these things, you can really be force multipliers for your team and for each other. 2 times speed. As we go through this, you can see that the 1-2 line has pretty much cleaned up what they pushed. That team needed to be hyper aggressive with their mediums over there if they were going to win. That was really their only hope, and that was probably not a great plan either, but still their best possibility would have been to just swarm in there. But you can see you got an RHM, a T-30, a JPZ, the 50-51 was over there in the IS-7. It's going to be difficult to convince the mediums in that case to kind of get over there and charge at them. I don't know if I get any more damage here. We'll see what happens. There we go, bat chat's coming up. We're going chipmunk speed. Yeah, I think I actually get a hit on this guy once. This is a point I try to make every one of my videos when things are just towards the end and you're in cleanup damage mode. Just push into them. So what if you take a hit or two, get a few more points of damage? I ended up with 3,700 and some change, and I believe Joey's about the same. So I hope that discussion helped. Make sure when you are in a platoon you're discussing your plans and you work together. We'll catch you later.